So with our text now in the newsletter, we've got to prep our images for placing inside of our newsletter in InDesign. So let's go ahead and do that in our image editing program, which is Photoshop, and then we'll be good to go. So I have two images, one for my first article and one for my second article. I'm going to open those up. File, open. Let's see. Let's go ahead and do this one for my cityscape. This is something I took in New York when I was there. So with this image open, I need to change the color to grayscale, which is one of my two colors, simple. And then make sure the resolution is 300 pixels per inch, and make sure that the image is about the size it needs to be to place it. So let's go to image mode. It's in RGB color. Change that to grayscale, and it's asking me to discard the color information. I'll hit yes. Okay. Sometimes just changing it to grayscale looks good, but other times it can look a little bit flat. So you might want to go back up to the image menu and change the brightness and contrast, or the levels, to give it a little more contrast. Okay. All right, that looks good. This will go on the second page, and it's going to span the whole width of the second page. So I need it to at least be 8.5 inches wide. I'm not going to worry about the height because I might move it around and use different parts of it. So let's go image size. All right, it's 72 pixels per inch. So I'll click off of resample because I don't want to add or subtract any pixels. And I'll just change that to 300 pixels per inch. And that way it decreases the inch size, the width and the height. Okay. And that's about the size that I need it. Having an extra 1.5 inches is probably going to be to my advantage when I place it in. That way I have a little bit more to work with and move around just to make sure it fits nicely. Okay. So I'll hit OK. Great. So let's go ahead and save this. We can save it as a Photoshop document, a JPEG, a PDF, an EPS, a TIFF. Those are pretty much the main formats that we can save to place them into InDesign. So let's go to File, Save As. So Cityscape, save it into the Big City Newsletter folder and hit Save. All right. So that's the first image. Now I'll save the second image. So placing images in InDesign is a little bit different from placing images in Illustrator in the way that they actually have two bounding boxes. So there's a frame for the picture, but there's also an outer frame which crops into the picture. And it's really handy. So let me show you how that works. With everything already in my newsletter folder, it's going to be easy to find and link these images that I'm placing. Awesome. So let's put these images in. I'll go to File, Menu, and Place. Should be easy to find because I've kept it all in my Big City Newsletter folder. So I'll open that up, and there's my first image for the mayor article. So I'll select that and hit place. Now as I do that, I'll just let this default. But as I do that, it loads my cursor. If I have another object selected, it will load it into that object. So just be aware. If that happens, just hit Command Z and it will take it out of that object and then put it back into your cursor. So right now I didn't have another object selected when I hit File, Place. So it loaded my cursor like this. And it's just waiting for me to click and set it down somewhere. So the outer bounding box is blue, and that just goes in and out to crop the image, which is kind of nice. That way I don't have to go back into Photoshop and crop it exactly how I need it to fit. Okay, so I'm going to move that blue bounding box to fit inside of those columns. I want this picture to actually flow with the article. That's why I'm doing that. Okay, now let's talk about the inside frame. So if I actually need to change the size of the image or rotate the image, I click on this little target here in the center and it gives me the gold bounding box. That is the actual image. So once I have that, I can scale it down by holding down Shift so it doesn't squish, or I can go slightly out from the corner to rotate it. Okay, and I can move it as well. But notice it stays within that blue bounding box frame. Okay, great. Just know that they are two different frames, two different bounding boxes, and they serve two different purposes. Perfect. All right, let's move on to the second image. I think that looks pretty good. Let's go to View menu, Screen Mode, and Preview, and see if that looks good. It looks pretty well aligned. It comes out from the bottom a little bit, but I think that's okay. All right, go back to View, Screen Mode, Normal. Let's go down to the second page. And this one, I drew this city skyline with the pen tool and went all the way around to close it up. So this is just a custom shape in which you can place images or text. But let's go ahead and pre-select that. And then when we go to place our image, it should automatically place inside of this pre-selected shape. So go to File, Place, go to my Big City Newsletter folder. There's a cityscape and hit Place. So let's hit OK. The background color is showing up, so let's go to our swatches and get rid of that background color, make it paper color. Awesome. That looks pretty cool. I kind of like how the buildings are on an angle, but the bounding box is straight up and down. That looks great. Let me click on the target and move the image around a little bit and see if it looks better. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So why did I do this image differently than the first? Well, the first was really pertinent to the article, so I let it flow inside of the columns. So the second image, it's not exactly for the article, so I didn't really place it within the flow of the text. Great. Let's see how this looks by going to View, Menu, and Screen Mode, Preview. Yeah, looks pretty good. The real goal of this, I think, is to make sure that you have a foundational understanding of InDesign, how to format text, how to place images, and also how to illustrate a little bit. It's also really important to keep all of your InDesign files or pertinent files that are linked to that InDesign document in a job folder with everything looking as you want it. Okay, check. We're going to save this as a PDF, and that's how you'll turn it in. So to save as a PDF, you go File, Export. I'll just do this one to my desktop. That way it's easier to attach and hand in for my assignment. There are different types of Adobe PDFs. We're going to use the Adobe PDF Print. Just for now, just keep it at high quality print and hit Export. So that touches the surface of InDesign, but I think it gives you a good foundational understanding of what it is and how to format type, how to place your images, and how to start designing in InDesign.